Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S24 FE and compare it against the iPhone 14 and see which particular phone is a better one for you. Now, the thing I would definitely tell you between both these phones is that whether you're going to buy the S24 FE or the iPhone 14, they're both very, very good devices. And if you ever want to pick up either one of these phones or some phones in between, you can get them in the links down below for the cheapest prices I find. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these phones, the iPhone 14, which came out back in 2022, on the front side of this phone, it's basically giving you a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. And it's a fairly solid panel for the most part. I think it looks pretty good. I don't really think there's too many complaints with a panel like this. The only thing I can kind of think of, which is kind of annoying here and there, is the fact that this phone is basically only giving you, a 60 Hz display. It's not the brightest panel of all time. It's not the best looking panel of all time either. So those things can be kind of annoying. But I think beyond that, it still is like a pretty good, respectable phone for the most part. And if you are going to go through and buy a device, I definitely do think it could definitely get much worse than this thing. Now, on top of that, the Galaxy S24 FE, on the other hand, is giving you a much bigger 6.7-inch dynamic AMOLED display. So a few things to keep in mind with this particular phone. This phone's panel definitely is bigger. It's also brighter at 1900 nits of brightness, but also it's 120 Hz. So that right there is a very big asset for this type of phone. Being able to go through and get a device that's going to be giving you this type of experience, I think in and of itself is a very, very big asset. And if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, this in and of itself, I would say, is one of the bigger assets going on for this type of device. So personally for me, I think that in and of itself is a very cool thing. If I'm looking at both, the fact that it has a hole punch display, doesn't have a notch like the iPhone 14, I think those things speak a lot of volumes for a lot of people. And I would probably say that is overall the better device panel when it comes down to these two things. Now, the sides of them are both pretty much flat, which is always nice to have. I love having flat sides on both, and that definitely is a nice thing going on here. On top of that, some other big things to keep in mind, you're also basically getting a USB Type-C port inside of the Galaxy S24 FE. There's only a Lightning port inside of the iPhone 14, which again is kind of a little bit of a downside here and there. On top of that, you're also getting, basically glass back on both. It's a standard glass back, which again is super nice to have. I always love having that type of capability, and you're essentially getting that here on both of them, which again is nice to have. You're getting a dual camera setup on the iPhone 14, a triple camera setup on the Galaxy S24 FE. You're getting wireless charging on both, and overall, when you look at the outside, the Galaxy S24 FE is definitely a more modern looking phone. This is one that's going to look like a more modern device when it comes down to it. So that's just kind of what ends up happening here. But I will say with the iPhone 14, it still feels and looks pretty good. But I would definitely say the S24 FE, for it having that bigger, brighter display, and for it having things like reverse wireless charging and different things like that, I think are, basically makes the, Galaxy S24 FE a little bit of a better device when it comes down to it. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is the price tag. The Galaxy S24 FE right now does cost a little bit more than the iPhone 14. So if you're going to go and pick up a device, the iPhone 14 definitely is going to be a much cheaper device, at least in the used market, than the Galaxy S24 FE. But in the brand new market, it's a little bit of a different story. So that right there is kind of a big thing to keep in mind there too. Like if you are wanting the phone that's going to be giving you the overall cheaper device, then something like the Galaxy S24 FE might be out of your league in some cases. But I do think for a lot of people too, it's really not like the biggest deal in the world either. So from that side, I hope that kind of makes a little bit of sense to you too. Now, on top of that, some other big things to keep in mind. The Galaxy S24 FE, from a camera perspective, is a little bit different than the iPhone 14. The iPhone 14 is giving you a wide and ultra-wide camera, which is great. The Galaxy S24 FE, on the other hand, is giving you a wide, telephoto, and ultra-wide camera. So this right there in and of itself, I would say is probably going to give you some better capability here and there on the Galaxy S24 FE. You have to remember on the S24 FE, this is going to be one of those phones that's basically going to be the top of the top for a lot of people. Like that is going to be a very solid camera. And when I'm looking at devices, when I'm looking at cameras, that thing is a very good performing device, which is something I really love. I will say on the on the iPhone 14, this camera is also still very decent as well. It's not like a perfect camera by any means, but I do think it's a pretty good device. And if you're going to go and pick up a camera, it could definitely get worse than this thing for sure. They're both giving you 4K at 60 on the front and the back, but the Galaxy S24 FE is giving you 8K capability, which I think that in and of itself is a very, very cool thing to have. Having 8K is amazing, and I definitely would say from that perspective, that in and of itself could be a really big asset for a lot of people. So just kind of keep that in mind too. Again, it's not like the biggest deal in the world, but that is a really big deal, I would say, for the average person. If you're going to go through and pick up a device, I would say that in and of itself is a really nice thing going on for that phone. So overall, when it comes down to the camera side, definitely have some good things going on for both, but I would probably say the S24 FE might just be the better camera here when it comes down to both of these. Now on top of those things, when it comes down to the software longevity, this is probably going to be somewhat of another asset for the Galaxy S24 FE. The iPhone 14 is still going to be supported with software, and it's still going to be here probably for the next couple of years, but the S24 FE, because this phone just came out, and because, Samsung has started to improve their software longevity, we could probably say that the latest and greatest FE lineup that Samsung makes is probably going to be giving us an overall better experience than a 3-year-old or 4-year-old iPhone at this point. And the iPhone 14 now is like 2 years old, but still, it had an older chipset. I'm not too sure how long it's going to last compared to the Pro models. So I would say that in and of itself could be just one thing to keep in mind in the back of your head. Not the biggest deal in the world, but if you are wanting the longer lasting phone, is probably going to be the Samsung Galaxy S24 FE, but especially from a battery life standpoint, how much longer that phone's going to last. The S24 FE has a 4700 mAh battery inside. The iPhone 14 has a 3279 mAh battery. This in and of itself, again, is another very big asset for the iPhone, for the Galaxy S24 FE. The iPhone is still good, right? It still has like a pretty good, battery inside of it, but it's really not close. The Galaxy S24 FE is definitely going to be the winner here as well. From a performance side, the S24 FE is giving you that Exynos 2400E chipset with 8GB of RAM, where the iPhone 14 is giving you that Apple A15 Bionic chip inside with 6GB of RAM. And the thing I can definitely tell you is that the performance is a little bit different on both. With the S24 FE, this phone is giving you more RAM, a good chipset, and as well as like a 120Hz display, which makes the phone feel so much smoother. Those are some really big things to have inside of this type of device. And I do think if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, that's a really big asset for the S24 FE in my personal opinion. With the iPhone 14, you're getting a very good chipset with a good amount of RAM for an iPhone. I do think that is also a very, very good performing phone here too. If I had to pick up one, I'd probably say the S24 FE might be the better phone from a performance perspective, but I'd probably say the iPhone 14's performance is still very, very good. And I would say for the average person, you're probably not going to feel like you're missing out on too much if you're getting something like a Galaxy S24 FE over an iPhone 14 or vice versa. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video and to answer the question, which one should you go ahead and buy? I would say if you want to go ahead and buy a brand new phone, I would say the S24 FE is giving you more flagship features when it comes down to it. Things like a bigger, brighter display, 120Hz, fingerprint sensor in the display, hole punch display, USB Type-C, reverse wireless charging, 8K capability on the camera, and probably a longer lasting phone. The S24 FE is probably more of a flagship still than the iPhone 14. But the iPhone 14, you're still getting a very good phone. In the used market, it's cheaper than the S24 FE. Even in the brand new market, I think it's cheaper. You're still getting a really good, powerful phone that's going to be here for many more years to come. So you're really not missing out on too much on the iPhone 14. It just so happens the S24 FE is probably the better one when it comes down to it. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.